The last time I saw his name was on a folded piece of paper, taped to a vase of white flowers. I was standing in a quiet funeral hall, holding my coat because my hands felt cold, even though the room was warm. I read the name once, then again, slow, like I didn't trust my eyes. That was the moment it finally hit me. He hadn't stopped calling because life got busy. He hadn't drifted away. He had been slipping out of the world, and I never noticed. I'm an old man now, pushing 80. When you reach this age, memories don't arrive in order. They come when they want, usually at the wrong time. Standing there that day, I remembered the sound of his laugh before I remembered his face. It was the same laugh I heard for more than 50 years, the kind that started low and ended in a cough. We met when we were both young men, working the same job, thinking our lives were just beginning. We were in our early 20s, both newly married, both tired all the time. I was clumsy with tools back then, and he wasn't much better, but we learned together. We ate lunch on overturned crates, shared sandwiches when one of us forgot to bring food, complained about our bosses, and pretended we knew more than we did. That's how friendships start, I think. Not with big moments, but with shared boredom and small favors. After work, sometimes we'd sit in his car for a few minutes before heading home, just to delay the noise waiting for us. Kids crying, bills on the table, dinner to make. Other days, we'd stop for a coffee and talk about nothing important. Sports, weather, plans we never followed through on. We didn't talk about feelings. Men didn't do that back then. But we showed up. That counted for something. Years passed without either of us noticing. That's how it always happens. One day you're young and worried about rent, and the next you're middle-aged and worried about your knees. We stayed close through it all. Our kids grew up together. We helped each other move houses. When my father died, he stood next to me at the cemetery and didn't say a word. Just stood there. I never forgot that life was ordinary, and I mean that in the best way. Work in the morning, dinner at night, television humming in the background. On Sundays, my wife would cook something that took all day, and sometimes he and his wife would come over. We'd sit at the table too long, drinking tea that had gone cold, talking about work and the price of groceries. When the kids left the room, we talked about how fast they were growing, how strange it felt. Then came the first real crack in the routine. His wife got sick. At first, it didn't seem serious. Just tiredness, doctor visits, pills lined up on the counter. He brushed it off when we talked. Said they'd handle it. We still met for coffee, but not as often. He canceled sometimes, said he was busy. I understood. At least, I thought I did. She died 2 years later, quietly. No long hospital stay, no big family meetings. Just gone. I went to the funeral, of course. Everyone did. I told him the usual things people say. I stayed for the food afterward, shook hands, listened. After that, we saw each other less. Grief changes people. It changes time. I told myself he needed space. My own life didn't slow down. My job got more demanding. My children moved away. My wife had her own health problems. Days filled up again. Weeks passed without me noticing. Sometimes I'd think about calling him, then decide it was too late in the evening, or I'd do it tomorrow. Tomorrow became next week. Next week became months. He stopped calling me first. That was the part I didn't understand at the time. For years, he had been the one to pick up the phone, to suggest meeting up. When that stopped, I assumed he was busy. Or tired, or just changing, like people do. I didn't ask. I didn't want to bother him. We still exchanged holiday messages for a while. Short ones. Hope you're well. Take care. Nothing personal. No real conversation. I told myself that was normal. People drift apart. That's what I believed. It was easier than facing the idea that something might be wrong. Then I retired. Suddenly, my days were long and quiet. I started noticing the silence more. The phone didn't ring the way it used to. I thought about him more often then. I even dialed his number once or twice, then hung up before it rang. I don't know why. Pride, maybe. Or fear of finding out what I had missed. Around that time, my wife passed away. That was the turning point in my own life. One day she was there, complaining about the television being too loud, and the next day I was alone in the house we had shared for 40 years. Grief has a way of shrinking your world. Suddenly, everything feels heavy. I expected him to call me then. Part of me was waiting for it. The call never came. I told myself he probably didn't know. Or maybe he heard and didn't know what to say. I made excuses for him, the same way I had made excuses for myself. Looking back, that was the moment we could have found our way back to each other. Two old men, both widowed, both lonely in ways we never learned to name. But neither of us reached out. The years kept moving. They always do. I learned how to cook for one. I learned which rooms to avoid in the house because they felt too empty. I made small routines. Morning walk, newspaper, afternoon nap. Life became quiet, then quieter still. Sometimes I'd see someone who looked like him from behind, and my heart would jump for a second before I realized it. WASN single quotes T. Then came the call. Not from him, but from his daughter. I hadn't heard her voice in years. She sounded older, tired. She told me he had passed away the night before. Heart trouble, she said. He had been sick for a while. She paused, then told me he used to ask about me. Asked if I was doing all right. Asked if I ever mentioned him. That sentence stayed with me. It still does. At the funeral, I listened to people talk about him. About how quiet he had become. How he didn't go out much anymore. How his health had declined slowly. I realized then that while I was busy telling myself a story about drifting apart, he had been sitting alone in his house, losing pieces of his life one by one. I walked up to the casket when it was my turn. I stood there longer than most. I wanted to say something, but there was nothing left to say. All the words I had saved for later had expired. I thought about all the times I could have called. All the ordinary days that could have included a cup of coffee, a short walk, a simple conversation. None of it would have changed the ending. But it might have changed the middle. Grief at this age is quiet. There are no dramatic scenes. No collapsing in public. It's more like a constant ache, something you carry with you while you do the dishes or tie your shoes. I didn't cry much. I just felt tired. Tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. Now when I look back, I don't blame him for stopping the calls. And I don't fully blame myself either. Life has a way of narrowing your vision. You focus on what's right in front of you and assume everything else will wait. Friends feel permanent when you're young. You think there will always be another chance, another conversation, another year. But time doesn't work like that. It doesn't announce itself. It just moves, quietly. By the time you notice what's missing, it's often too late to get it back. If there's one thing I wish I had understood sooner, it's this. Silence doesn't always mean distance. Sometimes it means someone is waiting. Waiting for a call. Waiting for a knock on the door. Waiting for proof that they still matter. I can't call my friend now. I can't fix that. All I can do is live with it and hope I don't make the same mistake again. When I think of him, I don't think of the funeral hall anymore. I think of two young men sitting in a parked car after work, not ready to go home yet, talking about nothing, thinking we had all the time in the world. If you're listening to this, and there's someone you haven't spoken to in a while. Someone whose number you still have, but haven't used. Maybe don't wait. Don't wait for the right moment, or the right words. There usually aren't any. Just reach out. Even a small call can mean more than you think. If this story felt familiar to you, or reminded you of someone you've lost or drifted away from, you can share that in the comments. Sometimes it helps to say it out loud, even to strangers. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, told slowly and honestly, you can subscribe. I'll be here, remembering.